Hi, and welcome back. Today we're talking about breastfeeding and the context of pumping your breast milk and establishing a milk supply. And would you believe it? It's even possible to create an oversupply.
Hello, and welcome to Sounds Healthy, a podcast of University Health System. I'm your host, Elizabeth Allen.
We're back today talking with certified lactation specialist Kate McLachlan of University Health System. Hi, Kate. Welcome back.
Hello. Thank you. It's great to be here.
So one of the things that is a big question, I think, for a lot of new moms is, am I going to make enough milk for my baby? And especially with pumping, it's a weird new world. Well, how do you introduce that concept to women? What are the questions they have?
There's really two categories of women who are pumping. So I first want to distinguish that, and we can talk about both of them. But we get a lot of patients who are with their babies right after delivery who are actually already feeling a little bit anxious about pumping once they go back to work and being separated from their baby when they go back to work. And will they be able to, and how long will they be able to provide breast milk for their babies? So that's a real concern. And then there's the population of women who are separated from their babies after delivery because the babies need special care, maybe they're premature, or they have some sort of health condition that separates them from their mom. And then you're talking about getting a milk supply going from the start with no baby breastfeeding. So those are two different populations and two different ways of talking about and thinking about pumping.
Well, let's start with the first category then. Those conversations about mom saying, well, I've got my baby now, but I am going to have to go back to work. I know I want to continue this as long as I can. How do I do that?
Right. So I'm one of the hospital-based lactation consultants, and so I immediately try to reduce the anxiety level right out of the gate, so to speak, because there's a lot of moms who really do already carry that anxiety with them as they're getting their breastfeeding established. So we certainly want to take the opportunity to talk with them about it in the hospital and get some of their preliminary questions answered and make sure that they have a pump and the right pump for when they do decide to go back to work or when they have to go back to work. But we try to reduce that anxiety level right away because it's really not recommended to start pumping unless there's a medical need to do so. You're separated from your baby or there appears to be some concern with milk production. The baby is the best at getting the milk started. So to those moms who are immediately asking this as their first question, we try to take down the anxiety level and just really encourage them to spend time skin to skin with their baby and help their baby learn to feed at the breast, because baby at the breast is going to get the milk established much better. So sometimes we even have moms who tell us that they want to start introducing the bottle while they're still in the hospital because of their anticipated anxiety about baby not being able to take a bottle when they need to go back to work.
So overachievers need to downshift a little bit?
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the moms who are worried about pumping right away. When do they start? If they're going to go back to work after 4 weeks, after 8 weeks, after 12 weeks, do they start pumping a week before they go back? I mean, what do you recommend?
Give or take, we usually recommend that a few weeks before they go back is really when they should start pumping and storing their milk in earnest. So we're hopeful that for most people, that's at least a month of just direct breastfeeding the baby. Most people don't need to go back sooner than 6 weeks. But if they do, then we do use that benchmark of a couple of weeks. So baby goes to the breast initially. We discourage supplementation and encourage full-time breastfeeding in order to establish the best milk supply possible. And then with that mom, we say a few weeks before you go back, start pumping a couple of times a day. So maybe one time first thing in the morning, one time in the evening, because the amount of breast milk that women get at each pumping session varies depending on the time of day as well. So it's an interesting biological rhythm that kind of follows the rhythm of baby. When mom pumps or when she breastfeeds directly, she releases a hormone called prolactin. And that prolactin has its own rhythms, and it tends to increase at night because most babies breastfeed more at night, at least initially. And so what most pumping moms find is that they get a lot more milk in the middle of the night and first thing in the morning, and then less during the day, especially in the late afternoon, early evening. So we want moms to kind of learn their rhythms and find the times that they are able to pump the most. But what we find is that little rule of thumb of maybe one time after feeding baby in the morning and one time after feeding baby in the evening. And we encourage the pumping after feeding just because we don't yet want mom replacing a feeding at the breast with a pumping and feeding with a bottle quite yet. So once that's established and they're starting to pump a few times, then they can start making that stockpile in the freezer, which is, I know what people are concerned about. And I know it's something that social media, I think, has contributed to levels of expectation of people photographing their deep freezes, full of breast milk and bags of milk. And so people have this expectation that they need to have that.
Not to mention competition.
Yes. So who's got, I had to buy a deep freeze for all of my breast milk. And, trying to really let moms know that realistically, most people will find themselves in a rhythm where they are hopefully able to stay a couple of days or a week ahead. And certainly each person is individual, and what they need in storage to alleviate that anxiety is going to vary. But that really people don't need an entire deep freezer full of breast milk in order to be ready to go back to work. So if mom is able to pump a little bit right after she's fed baby initially, she's not going to get as much, but she can start making that stockpile in the freezer that's going to help her feel better.
But speaking of social media and things you search up on the internet, there's recommendations that you get this much or that much per session, and I would think that would be very anxiety-inducing as well.
Yes, and people vary so much individual to individual as to how much they get per pumping session. We typically look at a 24-hour number, which is difficult to really generalize, but depending on if you're pumping full-time, say, for a baby in the NICU, or if you're pumping and breastfeeding your baby. So you don't really know exactly how much baby is getting at the breast. So you can't really tell how much you're getting in the 24 hours. So really, we just try to tell each mom to relax and celebrate every ounce she's able to get. Some people, it really does take them a while to build their supply with the pump, and it's going to vary from individual to individual.
Celebrate your ounces.
Right.
Also have a savings attitude. Little by little, you build up your savings.
That's right.
So about the moms who have babies in the NICU, moms who have reasons that they are separated from babies from the beginning, that is a whole different scenario, correct?
It really is. It's a slower process for the body. The body doesn't respond to the pump in the way that it does to the baby. You just don't have that feel-good hormonal response to your pump for the most part. So that is the first thing. You don't have the hormonal response. It's amazing. Our hormones respond to all of the senses, right? So it's baby being on the breast and actually suckling at the breast, but it's also the smell of the baby and the sound of the baby and the feel of the baby that contributes. So when you've got a machine doing that, and it's really not a machine that's exactly replicating what baby's doing at the breast. Baby at the breast has this whole set of rhythms and tongue curling and wave creation in the mouth and creation of negative suction vacuum in the back of the mouth. And baby's doing all these interesting things with their mouths that pumps really can't replicate. And so having the pump is going to slow down. It's not going to be the same as baby. So we do encourage moms who deliver and have to be separated from baby to start expressing their milk as soon as possible. There's really compelling research about hand expression or pumping within the first hour after delivery and the impact that has on milk supply long term. So getting moms started within the hour, at least with hand expression, is going to actually provide a benefit to them 6 and 8 weeks out. So getting those hormones started immediately, taking advantage of that high oxytocin state right after delivery is going to help with long-term milk production. And then they need to be using the pump basically as often as their baby would be at the breast. So we talk to moms about 8 times pumping every 24 hours, which is a lot, but that is what baby is doing at the breast. And then for those NICU moms, giving them some tips about things that they can do, of course, to pump at the bedside of their baby when that's possible. ask for a receiving blanket, or we have volunteer organizations that make these sweet little knit dolls that moms can put on their chests while they're pumping, and then that doll can be given to their baby, and the baby can smell the mom, and the baby can snuggle with that, or a receiving blanket that baby has been wrapped in or has been in the crib or the incubator with baby that mom can put around her neck while she's pumping that can actually give her that smell. If she can FaceTime, if partner can be at the bedside with baby, just all of these little things really help with those hormone levels and help moms pump more milk.
So it's fascinating that our noses, our sense of smell is so sensitive, and we might not even perceive it in a conscious way, and our bodies are responding to that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, so we're like a pack of dogs.
That's right. We are mammals. That's what we remind people of all the time.
So baby's in the NICU, and mom is pumping by the bedside. How tricky is that? I mean, you're in a medical setting. You're worried about your baby. How do you relax? And that, which is obviously important to the process of letting down milk, right?
Right. Yeah. So many things to unpack right there, which has to do with design of the NICU, with staff in the NICU and their understanding of mom's needs, chairs that are available, things that are available for mom to make her more comfortable and feel some more privacy in the NICU are all considerations. So we have recliners, we have screens so that moms don't feel so exposed. And then there's just the equipment issue of having a hospital-grade pump versus a personal use pump, which is also significant. So if there is a hospital-grade pump that's available to be at the bedside, so ideally, mom is in a comfortable position. She's next to her baby. She maybe has her support people there with her if that helps her feel more relaxed. And then she has privacy and the best pump for the job. So all of those things need to be considered as NICUs are designed and as equipment is made available to these moms.
You made a note earlier that I wanted to get to ask you about, and that is avoiding creating an oversupply. How is that even possible?
Right. So when we talk about pumping, we actually have to talk about caution about not pumping too much. So back to that maternal anxiety of making enough milk and having the freezer full of milk. And what we find is that some women are so overly concerned with making their supply that they actually overpump. So the lactation response is supply and demand. Mom's hormone levels increase the more she pumps or the more she breastfeeds. Also, the emptying of the breast takes away the feedback inhibitor. Having milk in the breast tells the body to stop making more milk. So as the milk is released from the breast, then that's what triggers the body to make more milk. It's a perfect system when we're just home full-time breastfeeding our babies because the baby goes through a growth spurt, feeds more often, and mom's body produces more milk. So if we have a mom who's really anxious, who maybe is breastfeeding her baby directly, and then she's pumping in between breastfeeding her baby, then she's actually tricking her body into making milk for two babies because she's overstimulating.
And
the
how
system.
is that not a great big hallelujah?
So it can really be problematic because of issues of engorgement and potential for infection and the need to you're setting up a cycle of needing to continually remove the milk because it can actually become very uncomfortable when the breasts become overfilled. And so we will sometimes see a mom who is breastfeeding her baby on the unit, and she goes through what is a natural process of engorgement, which is when the milk first comes in. Her breasts fill with milk, but the breasts are also having this inflammatory response that I think we talked about once before, that the tissue then kind of responds with an inflammatory process, and then it can make the swelling uncomfortable. And so then well-meaning family, friends, even providers will say, oh, you should pump to relieve that discomfort. But then what happens is it just sets the body up to keep making more. So everything just has to be balanced. With a baby that's in the NICU, again, we don't really recommend pumping more than the 8 to 12 times every 24 hours because that's how often the normal newborn breastfeeds. if moms are pumping more than that or longer than the recommended 15 to 20 minutes. Now, initially, when the milk is first coming in or before the transitional milk has come in and moms just have colostrum, that's the early milk in the breasts, and the pumps really aren't great at getting the colostrum out. The colostrum is thicker and there's less volume than with the mature milk. It's all babies need if they're directly breastfeeding most of the time. But we often use the analogy that it's like sucking a milkshake out of a straw. The baby has to really get that tongue going and that massage and pull the milk out kind of drop by drop. But when the full milk transitions in, it comes out much more quickly. It's thinner, and there's more of it. So that's when the timing is so important, that they pump at least 8 times and that they only pump with a pump, hopefully with a setting that stimulates colostrum. So our hospital-grade pumps and some of the more sophisticated pumps on the market will try to sort of replicate what baby does by using patterns at the breast of suckling and pausing and speeding up and slowing down, which is the best stimulation for getting the colostrum out. And that setting is used for only 15 minutes, but the consistency is what's most important, at least the 8 times in 24 hours. Then when the full milk comes in, then moms kind of get to know their own patterns of how often they let down, which is when the milk flows into the breasts and is expelled, and there are several cycles of that for most people during each pumping session.
So when are we going to come up with an AI pump that even looks like a baby, emits certain smells, makes certain sounds?
I feel like it's on the horizon. We did an amazing, several of us from the NICU and the mother-baby unit, we did a research trip to Chicago to Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's Hospital, where they're doing a lot of really innovative work in their NICU with trying to increase the amount of breast milk that babies in their NICU are getting. They worked with Medela, which is one of the larger pump companies, to create a pump that actually has a computer in it that measures the amount of time that moms are pumping and the volume of milk that they're pumping, because they got a large NIH grant to then pay these women for their time spent pumping. Because that's another, sort of misunderstanding, or I think people cavalierly say, breastfeed, it's free. But when you ask a pumping mom especially, it takes a lot of time and supplies and transportation of that milk to the baby. And so this really innovative program is trying to address all of those issues by having a courier to go out and get the milk, to pay the moms to actually spend the time pumping, and to make sure that they all have really high-quality breast pumps. So pumps are figuring out how to do more and more. And there's another pump on the market, or a few different pumps on the market right now that actually are wearable. So
we're getting there.
Yeah, it's, I feel somewhat conflicted about some of these developments.
They have little heaters in them. They make little sounds.
Well, that one, the wearable pump, part of me thinks, and we'll get into it when we talk about going back to work, but this notion that now I can wear my pump while I work feels a little insidious to me.
So that whole multitasking thing is pretty insidious. That also leads us to the whole not all pumps are equal, and probably the best ones are very expensive. So what's the range and what can you use?
Mm-hmm. One thing that's great is that the Affordable Care Act required that all insurance cover pumps for moms. And that's true, at least in the state of Texas, for Medicaid as well. So most of our moms have either Medicaid or private insurance, and those that do are eligible to get a pump free of charge. And that's a double electric, good quality pump. So when you talk about the range of pumps and expense, that's great news, that mostly they're covered right now. We, of course, have a significant population here that's not covered, unfortunately, which are the moms who are uninsured, the moms who are undocumented, who are on CHIP or WIC. And CHIP and WIC can actually, or at least WIC can help moms, although they have their own eligibility criteria. But we do always refer our moms who don't have insurance coverage to go to WIC and get help, especially if they have a baby in the NICU that they're going to be needing to pump long-term for. In terms of what the different pumps are, Yeah, it ranges from, well, some women actually just prefer to remove the milk with their hands because they are really good at that and they feel like it's more efficient and they get more milk out. So that's sort of on the range of technology, right? That's the lowest tech.
That sounds like quite a skill.
I was never very good at it, but I've subsequently, in doing this work, learned about some great resources for teaching women the techniques of hand expression. There's actually a pediatrician out of Stanford University at the Stanford Newborn Nursery named Jane Morton, who's done a lot of research on this, on hand expression and the efficacy of hand expression. And she's got great videos on their website exactly of what the technique is that works best for removal of the milk with the hands. And then there's manual pumps, which usually, operate on a sort of a piston or a lever that women can use one breast at a time to manually remove the milk with the pump. Then there are single electric and double electric. And then the double electric pumps sort of range from, sort of standard double electric pumps to ones that are fancier to the wearable pumps.
I have seen the manual single pumps that they look pretty inexpensive. Do they work fairly well?
They do. They actually, I've met some moms here at the hospital who are pumping long-term for their babies, and I've gone to see them in their rooms, and they're using a manual pump, and I've asked, do you not have the electric pump? And they're like, no, I've got it. I just prefer to do it this way. And what they like about it is it is effective, and you can really adjust the amount of pressure that you're using, and you can adjust the speed with which you're pumping and the length of time that you pull and all kinds of things like that. So some women actually are really comfortable with the manual pumps and like them.
So it's variable and it's high tech because it's your tech. It's you tech.
That's right. Of course, the time is an issue, and they can only do one breast at a time if they're using the manual pump, but they are inexpensive, and that's nice. And we provide them here at the hospital for women who request them, and they come generally as a piece in the electric kits so that women have them when they're on the go and they're someplace without the ability to plug in.
Okay. So, and we can post like those links to the hand expression videos, I think, and some other resources online when we post this blog. So we'll be able to put a lot of good information out there. This has been great.
There's another really great new device. Oh, well, I say new. I don't know how new it is, but I know that it's suddenly in the consciousness of everybody, and it's what is referred to as a silicone breast pump. The most common manufacturer of this, so some people just refer to it as a Haka because that's the name of the company that's really made a lot of splash with these silicone breast pumps. They're one piece, and they're like a funnel at the top and a bulb at the bottom of squishy silicone. And what's wonderful about them is for women who maybe are breastfeeding their baby on one side and like to pump on the other. So that's one other technique that women use if they don't let down well to the pump.
Attention overachievers, there is an outlet for you.
So you can have the baby latched on one side and you can use your pump on the other. A lot of women have discovered that that's a good way to get a bunch of milk because the baby gets the hormones flowing better and then they're able to release more milk. But with these little silicone breast pumps, they're just much more versatile, easier to manage. And what they do is you squish them and put them on the breast so it creates a vacuum. Mm-hmm. And then as the bulb opens up, the vacuum just passively pulls the milk out of the breast. So there are some people who leak a lot on one side while they're nursing the baby on the other side. And it's always been the big quandary of, I'm losing all that milk that's just dripping out as I'm feeding my baby. So there's little cup sort of devices that can be put in the bra to collect that milk. But now this silicone breast pump just even does a little bit of passive pulling of the milk out. And some women can collect multiple ounces with that silicone breast pump while they're breastfeeding their baby on the other side. And we've found it also to be useful in those cases of engorgement. A mom who's really engorged initially but doesn't want to start pumping because she's worried about creating oversupply. But this silicone breast pump can passively get just enough milk out to make her more comfortable between feeds.
So it's not one you would really want to count on for maintaining your supply?
It depends on the individual. I'm guessing it would be difficult to really maintain a full supply, especially for a working mom or a mom whose baby is in the NICU. But just for someone who's, just kind of wanting to passively collect and not spend a lot of time with a pump, because that raises another, really important issue that we talk to so many moms about who are feeling all this anxiety, right? About, I need to breastfeed because this is what's healthiest and best for my baby. And I think people feel that there's a certain level of judgment about it, and that this is what's expected, and I'm going to be a failure if I don't breastfeed my baby. And I sometimes sense that anxiety from some of our patients just even in the first few days. And if it's a mom who's having trouble with supply or who's been separated from their baby, and I sense all this anxiety about it's a lot of work to do what we call triple feeding. It's where you're breastfeeding your baby, and then you're pumping, and then you're feeding your expressed milk with a bottle. You're triple feeding your baby, and that can cause a lot of anxiety and take a lot of time. And for moms who are really anxious about that, I think it's important for them to hear from a lactation consultant who clearly really values breast milk, but we also really value the connection between moms and babies. And we don't really know what that ratio is of how much of it is the milk and how much of it is the bond. I think even some of the research about, IQs in babies who are breastfed, the level of IQ is higher, and certain of the health benefits that obviously there are some of them that are clearly related to the milk, but others, there's more confounding variables there about this connection that moms and babies have when there's direct breastfeeding happening, or when there's just a lot of skin to skin happening. And so sometimes being able to tell this mom, you know what, if you're going to be so anxious about this, and if this is causing so much, time spent with your pump, you're not spending that time with your baby. So just telling a mom sometimes, spend a lot of time skin to skin with your baby and feed them with a bottle and feed them formula or breast milk out of the bottle, but hold them close and make that eye contact and really connect with your baby while you're doing it. That can I just see the anxiety just lift sometimes off of someone saying, wow, to hear that and to hear that from a lactation consultant. It's really important that we don't get so caught up in this have to give the mother's milk to the baby that we kind of lose that connection with our babies.
So I don't need to come up with a magic formula of 8 ounces plus baby Einstein for 6 hours plus, this much skin to skin and that much.
That's right. Let's just simplify this and let's just spend time skin to skin. And while we're feeding our babies, pay attention to what that experience of the feed is, regardless of what you're feeding them.
And that's where the magic happens.
That's right.
Well, Kate, I learned a lot today, and I think this was really fascinating, and I appreciate you taking the time to come talk to us about this.
Thank you so much for having me back. There's so much in this field to talk about.
Good. Looking forward to the next one.
Thanks. Me too.
You've been listening to Sounds Healthy, a production of University Health System in San Antonio, Texas. Produced and directed by me, Elizabeth Allen. Editing and audio production by Mark Greenberg. Web and digital support by Selena Mejia and Joe Campa. Executive producer Lenny Kirkman. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast channel.